Alright, it's 9 o'clock AM, March 11th, Tuesday. We're gonna get started with this Lake County Board of County Commissioners work session. First up today, we have a review of first quarter supplemental requests led by Candace Bryan. Good morning.
Am I good to start?
Yes, which,
It's that, basically it's the table in that resolution is the correct one. Not
Okay.
doing the resolution, but the table in there is
And yes, we have Commissioner Bullock joining us from sunny Utah out there in Deer Valley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You don't get video, just audio.
Okay. You're on the chairlift right now, aren't you?
We're waiting for this big storm to roll through, I think.
so when we do supplemental, budget requests, really they're kind of, at this point in the year, it's more like revised appropriations, catching any errors that we had when we adopted the budget with the previous board, so like, it's been adopted, we just didn't put it in the right place, but I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
We can,
So there are a couple of things happening here, and Tim, do you wanna scroll down just to the table? There we go. So a couple of things, we agreed to count community contributions. They were approved on the December 13th meeting. So a lot of these items were board approved, but the timeline for them happening may or may not have captured them in the budget. So anytime that happens, we do have to go and actually make a supplemental adjustment because this has to get submitted to DOLA. You
Okay.
can never move money between funds without having it approved and then submitting it to them so they can see, hey, this is where the budget started, these are the changes they made. So community contributions, they were approved, this is just the documentation of the actual move of the funds. So that'd be $150,000 that are moving from the general fund into our county contributions area. We have 2 grants that were awarded to tourism and economic development that were accepted. So we are moving the money from the general fund to match those. And so that 1105 is the grants fund, and that specific code is related to their 2 grants for tourism. So that's $2580 and $2,000 that'll be coming from general fund to cover our match for that grant. Search and rescue, there was a little bit of what I believe was a miscommunication and understanding that the sheriff should have set aside $40,790 in his budget for search and rescue, and that got left out in the budget process. So we will be taking the money that was approved for search and rescue and move it from the general fund into the sheriff's budget so it can be distributed to SAR. The enterprise fleet for 2025 fleet vehicles has typically lived in the capital acquisition fund, which is that 1146 that you see right there. This one was, I think, missed in the budget process. So we are taking $515,000 from the general fund to cover the payments for the fleet. And the fleet is a little more expensive this year. We're changing out a lot of vehicles, and we've changed the type of vehicles that the sheriff's office is getting. In the future, we will not be forgetting to budget for the fleet, and we would like to actually move that to public works for our next round of budgets. Last 2 things, the coroner's refrigerator went out and we needed to replace it. the quote that we received for that is $9,440, and that will be moving from the general fund into his budget. And then last but not least, we decided to purchase the Harrison Park project property for $950,000. So we'll be moving general fund dollars over to cover the purchase of that land. And I believe we decided to put that into the commissioner's budget to purchase the property.
And that one, might need to change the title on that one, so there were 2 parcels that the previous board approved that purchase for, so down on West Third, across the street from where the earthwork has been done for the housing at 10-2 project, there's property across the street from that, above Federico Field. And then there's part of a strip of land to make that the whole Harrison field ours. There's like a long strip from
Yeah, the one,
12th all the way, yeah.
I've seen the blocks of it, shaded colors on maps. But that encompasses more than just, so you're saying that encompasses more than just Harrison Park,
Yes,
that
yeah.
purchase. I'll ask questions about that specific thing later, cause I still have so many with that one, but,
Okay,
but that's, that's already basically water under the bridge, that's been done already, so,
yeah,
cool. This is just the crossing the T's and dotting the I's on how it is on paper, basically.
yeah.
Okay.
Any questions, Commissioner Bullock?
Yeah, I'm wondering how $500,000 got missed. I don't understand the verbiage of that $515,000, the fleet vehicles. You say it got missed, so I'd like to know more about that. Was that
Sure.
not in the budget at all, or was it in a different category?
No, it should have been put into the budget, and I think there was not, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, I was a whole 2 weeks old at the point that we made the budget. So I didn't have a lot of the creation process was just me being brand new. But I believe that Michael thought it was captured in capital acquisition, and the thought was that he put it into his public works budget. Sounds to me like there was just not a good communication about who put it where, and exactly how much they should have put away.
Yeah, and this one is more on me as well, cause we changed the way we're using our capital acquisition fund to be more appropriate, putting more appropriate items in there. So with, so it should have gone into the public works budget under a new fleet, and then part of it, again, the miscommunication on some of it was in the sheriff's budget because the sheriff has joined the fleet program. So that's where that one came from.
Okay, well, that helps, I guess. I think we should review the fleet. It seems like there's a lot of fleet, a lot of white cars parked around, so I'd like to just state for the record, I think that should be reviewed maybe by finance or something and see if we can start cutting down on all those leases. So maybe I don't understand, but it would be helpful if I did, so I can answer questions from folks who are concerned about it.
Yeah, and we can work on getting Michael here to talk about like the transition from lease vehicles to the fleet. Why that makes more sense than having the leases, like the leases for the F-150s for the sheriff's office, so why we transitioned and why the sheriff was okay transitioning to the fleet. But we can get a work session together for that.
And
That sounds good.
I do wanna mention, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it before, I do know one of the reasons for moving to the leased fleet is that when the vehicle is paid off on our end, we will be taking some of the vehicles that are paid off and selling them to replenish that capital acquisition fund. And I know that that's not how we've done it in the past, but this is kind of new to be leasing the fleet. So I do know that part of the goal is to sell them, and when we can have that money, put it back into that fund to continue with the next round of the fleet.
It'd be interesting to me to see how many miles they get per year and who uses them. And if we could cut back on some of those and if they could have a sign up process where they share. I know each department head has a vehicle, so I don't know. I'm just concerned that I think there's a lot of vehicles lined up there and it doesn't seem like they move much.
Yeah,
So
and
I'd
maybe I
just
can
like to
answer, go ahead.
I'd like to understand that better, Tim.
Okay, and I'll work on that with Michael, and, you know, just to clarify, the fleet, is available to all county departments. There are only Public Works, Human Services, and Public Health have, dedicated vehicles, you know, to use for like daily use for daily business. And then the rest, you know, the majority of the rest of the fleet is available for, you know, any county business to be done, whether traveling outside of the county or if needed for inside the county. And that, I guess I should clarify too, that also includes, you know, our maintenance vehicles, the maintenance team, the plow trucks, and those kind of things.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with Commissioner Bullock that, at the very least, you know, it'd be nice to have the commissioners and even like Candace come along with us and just educate us about a deeper dive into the what and whys of our actual fleet, cause you know, if, I'm kind of a car guy, like if there's room to trim some of the stuff there, then, you know, it might be nice.
Sure, and I'll, on that, as we prepare for that work session, I'll make sure that Enterprise is there so they can explain like the full program and how like the financing
Okay,
and all of that works. And then Michael can talk about like the management of the fleet, the maintenance of it, you know, how people use it, departmental use, cause we do have the checkout system. So, you know, who uses it, when, for what business,
How
You
many
know,
miles goes on it?
how many
I
miles,
wonder
yeah.
if it would be beneficial for us to do a initial kinda look into that without the, you know, nothing personal against Enterprise, but it's like their business. They're like probably pretty good salesmen as to why we need every vehicle we have, you know?
Sure,
So maybe it would be good for us to just kinda get our own assessment on that without Enterprise there first, and then maybe talk to
Okay.
them with our questions.
okay,
For what it's worth, I did pull the pricing on the whole fleet because I felt that the estimate that we were being given seemed like it didn't match the billing. So I kind of dug into, okay, what are we paying? How many vehicles do we think we would receive this year? So I will say, because we are switching the fleet out when we get a brand new, can you remind me what the sheriff got?
the Tahoe's, the
Tahoe.
sheriff's office.
Sorry, when we get a brand new Tahoe, there is a like upfront $13,000 pay-in to get that new vehicle, and that won't be happening every year. It's kind of like the initial to get it, you have to pay a chunk up front as a deposit.
Okay,
So we do know that we wouldn't be getting as many as we are this year, we're just switching the fleet out. So I do feel like even if they don't join us, I can kind of run us through the billing and give a little rundown of what they're charging us for and when, cause I called them and kind of made them run through it with me so I could make sure I had a correct estimate. We don't have to do this process twice.
okay. Yeah, it was like the little things, like I noticed that the smaller, more econo Ford Mavericks were costing us more than the bigger mid-sized Ford Rangers. And it was like, oh, supply and demand, there more people want the Mavericks, that's why they cost, you know, 29,750 instead of the Rangers were at like 26 or 27,000. I'm like, well, then we should have just gone with more Rangers, you know, it seems like there's, you know, I don't know. It'd be nice to, you know, really just take a better look at that. But yeah, so I agree with Commissioner Bullock on that one. But I think that's a whole nother conversation for another time. This is just making sure we're reporting what has already happened to DOLA. And unless Commissioner Bullock has any more questions, we'll keep rolling on this.
No, I'm good. I'd just like to, thanks for the work on that, Candace, and
Yeah.
having something like that missed is concerning, but, my concern is that all those vehicles, several of them don't move, and I know I've said this before, but it's one of the things that a lot of people have, talked to me about and stuff, how come they never move? So I'm just reiterating that point. I don't need to repeat myself.
Great. So are we just looking at what we've taken out of the moved from the general fund to cover, things that weren't done correctly last year and that we're remedying for the future?
So two of those items, the search and rescue and the enterprise fleet, the community contributions, I think that was more a timing issue when they were approved and the timing of getting them into the budget. The two new grants are new, so we wouldn't have known in time for the budget. The coroner's refrigerator just went out, that wasn't in time to have done the budget, and the purchase was voted on and approved after the budget happened. So,
Okay,
any of those things that you guys approved throughout the years, if you say yes to and they're not in our budget, we have to do this every quarter to capture, things like the land purchase that happened after the budget was published.
okay. And this is it, this catches us up on the whole first quarter, okay, cool. Alright, well, I do get excited about, the idea that we're getting better every quarter. Okay, I can imagine, not saying one way or another, but like that this list, probably in some other counties is probably pretty big. So at least we've got it down to this.
Well, in this way, when we do it quarterly as well, it gives you guys a closer touch base with the budget and things that would happen, because previously in some other counties, just do it at year end, one giant supplemental. So it can be quite a cluster.
Yeah. No, I'd rather stay on top of this quarterly. Alright, yeah, I don't have any other questions that would be pertaining to how this is moved around from fund to fund.
No, I'm good too. I'd just like to make one comment on the Harrison Park project. That's a lot to spend for the size of that parcel. So,
But in that, Commissioner Bullock, there's two pieces of property. There's the one on West Third, across from where we've done the earthwork down there, kind of above Federico Field, the triangle above Federico Field. So it includes that parcel and part of that strip of land by the elementary school.
right. So if we don't do anything at Harrison Park and that strip of land goes vacant, that's gonna look,
That's
it's a
what?
lot to spend for something that's gonna sit there if nothing happens there. So, that's all I have on that.
Anything else on this one?
No, I'm
Not for
good.
me.
Okay, thank you. Perfect timing, Jonathan.
Yeah, alright. And Tim, I have a couple of slides, if that's useful, I guess typically do it, but.
Up to you, we have your two PDFs.
I have the ones that Sam sent last week to pull up, and then I told him he has to doc printouts too, and I told him that was fine as well. But yeah.
Well, there's just some more visual stuff if that's appealing.
Sure.
Better than words and
Sure.
tables, I think.
Sure. Alright, so yeah, agenda item 2, introduction and overview of the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative. Berwick and mitigation efforts led by Jonathan Paclian.
Yes.
Alright,
Well done. No one ever gets it on the first try.
And so, give me,
Where should I be?
you can sit right here if you want, give me a second if you wanna give your intro and.
yeah, sit up here, I'm all alone by myself up there in the front of the room.
Okay, well, I do have handouts.
Sweet.
Just make sure. Basically what you've already seen, but something just to take home with you. And
Thank
do you think the other commissioners would?
Yeah, leave, yes, please. I'll make sure they get them.
Wonderful. So Tim, tell me when I should go or?
Yeah, start and I'll get your presentation teed up.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Jonathan Packley, and we've met once at the, what was it, the round table, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, in Pueblo, so,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
alright,
That's a good place to start, cause that's where, our nonprofit formed, was the round table. So we serve the entire Arkansas River Basin. There's a lot of importance here in Lake County just because it is the headwaters of the Arkansas River. So we were formed out of a need for wildfire mitigation, post-fire flooding back in 2017. And so that's one place we've worked consistently on. And a good example of work we've done here is the Interlochen fire, just last summer and fall. We'll be continuing that work, into the future as long as funding allows. So we work across private and public land. From a water perspective, a lot of that comes from pre and post fire work, as I mentioned. Other things like water quality are important to us. We did just kick off a River Watch program here in Lake County, as well as some other counties along Arkansas.
On the water quality, that one always grabs my interest first and foremost, cause I have like all these instances where I'm driving around town and, you know, all the old crusty vehicles sitting in people's backyards, I can't look at them without thinking about how much stuff they're leaking into the groundwater. And I seriously, I lose sleep over this stuff. But one other thing, you know, since you brought up the Interlaken fire that I've been curious about, and I heard something months and months ago, but was, have they finished the study or the testing to find out if there were, fire retardant chemicals going from the burn area into the Arkansas yet, or like downstream from that?
I'm not sure. Do you know who was doing the study?
Emily Olson's C4, Emily Osborne, I think, was someone in
Yeah.
Canyon City, I think, was working on that.
From Blue Elements, I think.
I'm not 100% sure, I just, you know, friend of a friend, someone was like, oh, she's working on this thing, and I was like, oh, dang, I didn't think about that, like, the stuff they used to put the fires out ended up in
Yeah,
water supplies.
I'm not sure about that. I wasn't part of the study.
Yeah.
What we were primarily concerned with was ash and debris going into Twin Lakes, which has a serious impact on water quality as well.
Yeah,
For all the people that store water there and Trans Mountain diversions, Front Range, as well as downstream effects. So that's been our primary concern. So we're working with Aurora Water, Colorado Springs Utilities, and they're doing a little bit of testing. And we could ask them too if they're picking up anything that's of concern, but I haven't heard anything.
okay,
So I guess continuing on with that, I kind of broke this into a few different tasks, as you'll see. I guess I'm driving here, so I can get right into it. I think this is number one. COSWAP is an acronym, and I'm gonna do my best to define all of my acronyms. Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Planning. And this is a state program which provides basically workers to conduct wildfire mitigation. And we've been doing this since 2022 here in Lake County, through the county. The important part of that is it has to go through a governmental agency. So we would do it if we could, but we do as much as we can, which is work with the state, work with the DNR, who the program is through, work with the crews on the ground. We lay out the forestry, and we monitor the crews and make sure they're comfortable. And in this case, there's a few different ways you can use these dollars, and in this case, it's SWIFT crews, which are the GOC crews, which do amazing work. You might have seen them around town. They lay out firewood for the community, and then we also create piles, which are then burned. And I think the biggest success of this program was we had our first burn with Leadville Lake Fire Rescue in December for 50 piles, and that was sort of the first major hurdle of like taking these piles and turning them into smoke. And so we're really proud that's how it happened. DNR is really happy to hear about that as well.
That's a tough one, cause there's a really small window when those burns can happen, I think, where they can get vehicles in and out.
Yeah,
There's snow
it's
on the
like
ground, but not too much snow.
Some snow, but not too
Yeah.
much. Yeah, it's like that sweet spot, and that's why it was in, I think, December 17th or so, when there was a few inches, but not feet.
Yeah.
So, fire department's gonna be continuing to work on that. That's a little bit more of they're in charge of that. We're in charge of just doing the mitigation or helping that mitigation go forward. And so the critical part about this is that we can't do it without some project management support, because it just takes, that's not, they do a little bit as of this year. They'll pay for a little bit of project management, and that's that 9,700. And so you'll actually be able to just retain that and pass it to us if you choose to go forward with this. And then the rest is to cover our expenses, which, you know, we'll have a forester helping do layout. I'll have Sam, our watershed coordinator for Lake County. He'll be out there monitoring the crews, making sure we're doing the reporting, working with DNR. Cause it happens fast, you know, the DOC crews get here and we have about 15 weeks to make it all happen. And as you all know, our season for doing this sort of work is short here in Lake County. It's probably our biggest challenge when we're doing wildfire mitigation. Cause if you lose just a couple weeks, you already start feeling behind. So that one I think is number one, just because without the county's support, it won't happen this year. And we've been doing it for 2 years now, and we'd love to see it continue, and I think DNR as well. And then moving on, unless there's questions, I mean, feel free to stop me, but the Lake County RAP is similar to what we were talking about with Interlochen, in the sense that we're trying to get ahead of wildfires, and do some planning so that we know what to do if and when they happen. The irony of that whole thing is that the Interlochen fire happened within the boundaries of our wildfire ready action plan. So we already feel a little bit behind there, but you can see why that's such an important place, and that's why it was our number one targeted area basically in the basin, because of the importance of Twin Lakes and all the users there. And so we already have that grant, and that's moving forward. And I think there's direct benefits to recreation and you know, the water users here in Lake County. But we'll be continuing that, and hopefully we'll be actually next week we're gonna have a meeting at Twin Lakes with stakeholders, and everyone here is of course invited, to discuss. That's our first stakeholder meeting, and so it's gathering the interests and the needs of the community and the stakeholders. So there should be a good representation from Twin Lakes folks, but also water providers and others in the area. So we've secured that grant and we'll be moving forward with that. We're contracting with JW Associates, some of you might know, and they're also helping with our interlocking fire recovery. So it's a lot happening around Twin Lakes, and we haven't even gotten into doing wildfire mitigation, which hopefully we're gonna pursue as well in the Twin Lakes area, now that NEPA's, I think, complete, or at least the period of challenging NEPA around Twin Lakes is over now. So, moving on to the third task.
NEPA is the Forest Service, like protection, natural protection.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just, we were close to actually grabbing some more money from DNR, but the fact that the NEPA wasn't finished, we couldn't really move forward with doing that, so we might try again. There's a series of problems, I think, here in 2025 between Forest Service lack of capacity. There's a little less funding this year. And so I just want to stress that I think our work as local governments and nonprofits is just going to be more important so that we can provide funding and assistance to our federal partners, which we did last year and we've done many years in the past, but I think it's just going to be more important this coming year and into the future. But that's a little beside the point, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. Moving on to task 3, that's our California Gulch Comprehensive Watershed Restoration Project. And that's our biggest one. That's just in 2025 alone, over $1 million. And that comes from the Natural Resources Damages program that supports work to rehabilitate damaged natural resources in Upper Arkansas. So it's specific to this area because of our legacy mining history. And so we raised $4 million through that program, and then we matched it with another $4 million. So over the course of 5 years, we're in roughly 2.5 years or so. We'll do $8 million through this program alone. And I can get into some more detail on that here in a minute because it's more interesting than this table. So I'm gonna keep it brief. Riverwatch water quality monitoring. That's just to support water quality monitoring here in Lake County. We actually started the program further downstream, but Sam went to the training and he was like, well, why don't we do a few samples here in Lake County? And so we started doing that already. And I've got some pictures of Sam breaking the ice to do some sampling in January.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Would you know what locations they're sampling out of the Upper Arkansas for what's, and are they checking like what's coming out of Climax Mine, things of that nature, like?
So this is in Lake Fork Creek, and so it is an impaired stream, and the suite of analyses I probably can't name right now, but it does pick up things like metals, and we have to send those actually to Fort Collins where they get analyzed.
Okay.
So I think metals pollution is probably a big one, which is legacy mine stuff as well as natural. So getting a baseline of how the stream is now as part of this program, and then figuring out what we can do to mitigate those impairments would be a next step.
Okay. But that's just Lake Fork, not further up 91 on the arc or anything like that?
No, not to say that we couldn't pursue that, and the woman you mentioned too, Emily at Blue Elements, I think is doing some as well, or intends to.
Okay.
So we did get some funding from Climax too. I think, yeah, Climax Mine, we just secured that because they wanna make sure Watershed Health is part of their programming as well, so,
Yeah, it'd be good for like public outreach and stuff too, like there was that apparently erroneous media report a couple years back about the glyphosate in Lake County and like that, people ran with that, you know, and I was guilty of it too, I was like, what, like what's this? So, you know, you start researching that chemical and it's used as a pipe descaler as well as in agricultural uses, so what's coming out of Climax, you know, like, and it caused a bunch of uproar, but something as simple as that could have nipped that one in the bud really fast if, you know, there was clean tests coming out of the Arkansas up there by Climax.
yeah, so it's a pretty new program, but, I think there's a lot of potential. And hopefully that's something we can pass off to, as a citizen science program, that's its intention, is like we have a professional coordinator, but it comes down to students or citizen scientists who are doing the sampling and then we facilitate it. But let's move this on here.
Just one quick question on that table was, are the requests, the request column in addition to pass-through grant funds, or is that the pass-through grant funds, or you wanna pass those portions of grant funds through Lake County to help support your guys' projects?
Yes, so we would require 31,000 for 2025, as a total. But you'll be able to capture almost 10,000 from this co-swap grant, which we've already secured. Co-swap is on board, so the cost to Lake County, I tried to lay this out as simple as possible, will only be 21,300.
And I did set that aside in the commissioner's budget for 25.
Okay,
And you will hear from Jonathan again next week for the PSA for this.
okay, cool.
Did that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yep, sure does.
Okay, so I've talked a bit about our different projects. This map is from our California Gulch work. You can just see all these different places and areas where we're working across the county, all the way down south, up to Evans Gulch and the Sherman Mine, east fork of the Arkansas River. There's probably too much to talk about just now, but I want to just give you some visuals, as well as our co-swap grant, which we do use for match. You remember how I said we have $8 million. The co-swap will count as match towards these NRD funds, towards our $8 million project. And these are the areas that we've been working, the ball fields, and then on CMC campus. First burn was in this area in December. And I just want to highlight the lifespan of this fundraising that we've done. We're looking at $10 million of secured funds over the next several years. 2025 alone, probably in the range of $2 million. And just highlighting contribution from last year from the county commissioners of 50,000. So bang for the buck is pretty good, I would say, given all those zeros. And I want to just get into a little bit more detail with some visuals here. Going from piles and firewood to smoke, and the fire department handling that. And the other thing to highlight from the fire department is they got a burn boss out of this program, meaning they were able to do the training and then hold the burn and then receive that certification. So now they have someone who's certified to handle these burns on a larger scale in-house. So I think that's a great thing for the county and for the fire department going forward. And it's a product of this state program, and the state's really excited too. We might even do a little press release to talk about how successful it was. And the crews love working here because it's flat. You know, they tend to get the short straw on some of these projects, but, and they're on the side of a mountain and 95 degrees, but they love coming to Lake County, so it's flat and beautiful and cool. Two, I wanna talk a little bit more about Twin Lakes. Couple of things, I'm doing my best to separate interlock and fire from our planning effort, but they're kind of intermixed just because they happened at the same time. And you can see last year we helped with a volunteer day, doing some post-fire work. We had some support from the water utilities, but also the money that we raised through the Colorado Water Conservation Board. And we put in a lot of structures to help with some of that debris flow, ash, sediment coming into Twin Lakes. And then on the right here, this is a map by our contractor I mentioned, JW Associates. This is what they're doing. They're starting the desktop portion of this of let's see, which one was this? Flame length. So we've already started to get data of like where are areas that we gonna target in our project area. And I wanna highlight it, there's so many colors on here, sorry, but this purple is the project area of our Twin Lakes Wildfire Ready Action Plan. It actually goes into Pitkin County because we captured water over in Grizzly and then it's transported it into Twin. So it felt like it was a natural part of this project. And so there's gonna be a lot of different things that come out of this, but you can see where interlocking burned, you got a lot of red, so it's kind of confirming things that have already happened, but that doesn't mean we can't do other work in different parts of this area to help protect our watershed and our water supply. So as this data comes in, we will of course keep you guys informed of what we can do going forward to mitigate some of these effects.
This might be a silly question, but like flame length in feet is basically like relative to like fuel density, like how hot those fires are gonna burn, how lengthy the flames are gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could explain it any better than that, but
Okay.
it's sort of like an intensity measurement.
Okay.
If you have really long flame lengths, you have,
Travel faster.
yeah, and a potentially
Gaps.
catastrophic fire. And then there's other maps I can share with you guys of like BT, I don't know how they calculate this stuff, but like BTUs of a fire and other things. And this is done through aerials and LiDAR and all these and some on the ground measurements to create these maps. And I don't want to detract from the community wildfire protection plan, which we also helped with, which does some of this stuff, but at a little bit lower resolution. And so this is just a way more intense, higher resolution, targeted area, so that we can actually take a little bit more action in an area that we find of great importance, such as the Twin Lakes watershed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty detailed, spectrum of colors there. It's almost like they got down to each individual tree.
Yeah. So that's ongoing, we really only kicked off a few months ago, and there'll be a lot more coming out, especially after a summer field season. Okay, so that's Twin Lakes. This is an actual success of part of our California Gulch program. There are three components to our California Gulch program, and that's we call them culverts or crossings, the wildfire mitigation, which we talked a bit about, and then mine reclamation. I'm not gonna get into a ton of detail on the mine reclamation here. That TU is handling most of that, but it's still part of this program. And we've lots of information if anybody's curious there, but I just wanted to highlight one of the successes from County Road 11. I know it was a bit of a unfortunate situation with having to shut down the road and stuff, so I think we heard probably more about that than the actual success of this, which is going from this situation to this. And you don't see water coming out just yet, because this was during construction. You can see our, Michael's equipment is out. But they did a great job, and this has been on Public Works lists for a long time. And it was number one because of the shape that it was in. You can see it from the photos.
Yeah.
I could see the change, walking across that bridge, season to season. It was like buckling. It was not in good shape. But not only do we get a new bridge, a new culvert, thinking about the the other effects, which are improvements to the stream. Aquatic organisms can pass through
Yeah.
more easily now. That improves the health of the stream, improves the health of the fishery. A natural bottom is great for those organisms. Not to mention how we try and tie all this together. We have a post-fire flood event. A culvert here, an old culvert with those tubes is gonna get blocked sooner than one with a nice boxed arch and a natural bottom. It's gonna be easier to clean out too. So there's that part. And then the third part is the mine reclamation, and we're downstream of mines. There's drainage into these creeks. What happens if there's a fire that impacts the stream, washes tailings or mine waste? We've got flooding, we've got mine waste, we've got fire, we've got aquatic organisms. It's all kind of coming together, and that's why we were able to make a really good case for this proposal with the Natural Resources Damages Trustees. And so this is just one part of it. We've got 6 more to do. So there's one on Forest Service land at Half Moon, and then 5 others that are county jurisdiction. So we might be doing 2 or 3 this summer. We're a little bit behind given some of the challenges that we inevitably have faced. I'm sure there'll be more, but we're gonna try and play a little catch up this summer and knock out some more of these culverts. Okay, that's just a little bit more on the mine reclamation. There's Craig Bissonette, and this is Sugarloaf, and that was kind of what I was trying to illustrate with, if there's a fire up on Sugarloaf, what will we see happen downstream? So this is just us trying to get ahead of some of these problems and play a little catch up, rather than act in a reactionary manner. Some of my staff here, this is down in Hayden Meadows area, a different type of mine reclamation project. We've known about this for a long time through the EPA and other agency work, but we're finally actually trying to mitigate those effects. We call that a fluvial tailing deposit, and you can just see how dead it is. I mean, over here it's doing good, nice and green.
Yeah.
Nothing growing here. I've walked across that, and I go fishing right over here too.
Yeah, I
And-
walk my dog right there.
Yeah, it's a really cool place, but this is still a sore spot here. It's literally just, it's damaged.
And that's just after spring high flows recede, that's kind of what's left over, and as there's sediments that can be traced back to the tailing piles. and
I
stuff?
think it's actually a really fairly old deposit, and maybe Bryce knows more about it than I do, or somebody else, but I think it washed in decades and decades ago at a high flow event, from way upstream, and then was deposited, and even as it moved downstream, it was still just so concentrated and contaminated. After it's deposited, it still causes that, and I don't think we get flows into that anymore.
Okay.
If anything, it would probably improve the situation because it would dilute the contaminants, but we kind of want to avoid that. We want to get ahead of it and get that soil rehabilitated, so that when the inevitable high flow event happens, it's not going to be contaminated soil, it's going to be remediated.
Oh.
So
Bryce, do you know if that's up higher by the trout ponds, or if that's down lower, like by the petroglyphs and stuff?
That's probably, no, that's up by Hayden Reservoir, that's like right on the
Right,
trail.
but, okay,
Yeah, there's like portions, and you see there's like little test spots where they've done like regrowth kind of tests and studies throughout that, but that's right at the reservoir site.
Okay,
But those fluvial tailings are everywhere, from California Gulch, you know, that's kind of where they entered was California Gulch, everywhere on down. So like, over the past 20, 30 years, that's been the focus of a lot of work, is on the Seppi Ranch and the Smith Ranch. And then the Aurora property is these fluvial tailings and remediating them.
Thanks, Bryce, yeah.
man, it's just nothing grows there, that's how bad that soil
But-
is.
What it is compared to what it was 30 years ago is incredible. Like if you walk down there with Mike Conlon, he can kind of point out the actual projects and show you the phase success of how
Okay,
they've been able to. There's still a few glaring spots, but you know, it's remarkable compared to what it used to be.
okay,
Yeah, and it's neat what Jason Willis can do. He's our very own Trout Unlimited reclamation specialist. He serves the entire western United States, but he's right here in Salida. So he's the expert, and he's got his test plots and is working on a mixture of basically compost and other things, lime, that will allow things to grow and then naturally, instead of,
neutralize
yeah,
soil
it
quality,
can be done
pH.
in place, which is the amazing thing.
Okay,
Rather than having to go in there, scoop it out, take it away, you know,
Right.
do something, bring in, so it's in a way a little cheaper because we can do it right there in situ. So, that's pretty neat, and it just needed a little influx of cash to make that happen, and we were able to get that through the Natural Resources Damages Program.
is that still, I know it's good fishing in there, is that still gold medal trout waters in that area?
Yeah, amazing that this is just out of view over there.
Yeah,
But what we don't want is, that to be entered into the system again
right,
and impact that amazing fishery.
yeah, even though it's great right now, there's always room for improvement and, you know, considerations for protecting what's there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we've been working with Mike Conlon, and now that he's kind of passed the torch of Lacosi, Lake County Open Space Initiative, you know, that's been a really good venue for us to talk about this work and gain a little extra support. We even have a little bit of, outreach dollars that we can help with that, and then maybe redo the signs that are in there. Those signs have just taken a beating over the years, and so it's just a great success story. We wanna tell that story. And I just include another photo of several of us up on private land in the Sugarloaf area, somewhere in here, I think. This is water utilities, the State Forest Service, the US Forest Service, National Forest Foundation, ARWC, among others. Maybe Bryce, you were even there, Lake County folks. Talking about forestry. They're working on a forestry plan. We've raised some dollars to help with some fuels mitigation in the Sugarloaf area. So again, it's all part of this, trying to see this as a multifaceted program.
I'm having trouble wrapping my head around how big of an area Sugarloaf is. I mean, I always just think of the little campground right there, but
Well, this is up
everything
on this-
above the dam,
This is up on the side of the mountain, you know, with all the tailings piles that
like
pop
Fire
out.
Road 105, that area?
It's like, the access to the property is behind the gate right at the dam.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And it's 1,000 acres of mining claims kind of consolidated into one property.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know there's like several hundred acres owned by one person
Yep.
up there.
Yep.
And so we're working with that landowner and the State Forest Service to work on that.
That landowner is like amenable to environmental concerns, I think, right?
Mhm. Yeah, been
Good
pretty
to
good
work with.
person to work with, so we lucked out in that case.
Okay, cool.
And because, he was there and allowed us to do a tour with all these work trucks and, very interested in improving the quality of that land and reducing fire risk, which helps all of us here. Okay, I was getting to Sam on the ice here, doing his river watch thing and doing some sampling, and things like temperature and metals, are things that Sam will be sampling here in Lake County, and that data's all public. And it'll take a while before it's, we start seeing trends, but, we're off to a good start there. We could probably just use a little bit more support on that, just because it wasn't we hadn't exactly planned to do it in Lake County. We got a grant through the Bureau of Reclamation actually, to do some, further downstream in the Middle Arkansas Basin, which kicked off that program, and then it just kind of snowballed into doing other areas, and here we are in Lake County, so just looking for a little extra support there. And that's it for my slides. I know that was a lot of information, but how about I pause there and see if there are any questions or discussion points?
No, like the big thing that jumped out at me was the, kind of the return on investment here. Like, we contribute a pretty small amount versus what, like 2.2 million in projects that are happening?
Just in 2025.
Wow.
Yeah.
And fire remediation is definitely a huge one, that's, I don't think there's anyone who'd argue with the value you get out of working on that.
And I think we really turned a corner in Lake County too about the acceptance of doing that work ahead of time. And now that we've had kind of a serious fire at Interlochen, there's really not a lot of question about the effects that it can have.
I just hope people understand how lucky we got with the Interlaken fire.
Mhm.
It was, the timing, the locate, everything was like, that was, that could have been a lot worse.
Mhm.
I got a quick question for you, Matt Bullock here.
Sure, Matt.
Hey, is there any plans to upgrade the parking out on 91 for those two access points? Particularly the one around mile marker 3.5, that the people are constantly blocking that guy's driveway.
That's state parks, the conservation easement. We can get the state parks, guy here to answer that. Cause that's, you don't manage it.
No.
Different
Okay.
group, sorry about that.
No, you're good. Then-
You guys don't do any work out there on 91 on the Arkansas?
Can somebody help me picture where we're talking about here?
It's down at the Headwaters Ranch there on 91, there's a conservation easement, and now CBW put in a couple of fishing access points in the last year.
So if you think it,
Between here and Climax, the mine itself, there's a handful of new recreational spots between here and there.
Can you see the air?
It's like, if you're familiar with where they wanted to build that gravel pit a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
it's that property.
it's this purple part, this conservation easement.
Yeah, I mean, we don't deal with conservation easements, or CPW properties, but not to say that we couldn't help if there was an issue that we wanted to address, because mostly what we do is we help talk about the issue, raise the funds, and then go after a project, but, currently no involvement there.
Do you have more questions, Matt?
No, I'm good. I'm done with my
Okay.
dumb questions.
There's no such thing as dumb questions. Yeah, I guess, what was the company you said that, was doing the water quality testing that, you associated with, Emily?
Yeah, it's a state, well, I guess two things.
Blues?
Blue Elements is Emily's organization, another nonprofit. And the water quality program is through River Watch,
Okay.
which is a statewide program.
Are you guys, in contact with, MUA about like all the leaks and stuff that are happening up there? Is that, I mean, I know we've focused primarily on, a little bit of water quality testing, a lot of fire remediation and things associated with that, some of the drainages, but they've got some pretty heavy leaks happening over there, I think, right now. Is that like kinda out of your scope of like what you guys are working on, or is there anything in there that overlaps?
I guess, what was the acronym that you used?
Mount Elbert Water Association,
So it's the Panic neighborhood. I think Bryce actually probably knows more than you, sorry.
yeah, no, I
Very
just
likely.
wasn't sure where the overlaps happen or not, because the water subject is so incredibly complex and so multifaceted that I'm not sure who to ask what sometimes.
I think that's more of like, it's a municipal system issue.
Okay.
So their resources are gonna be with the kind of utility provider resources of the state. And Jonathan's organization, I just wanted to speak to like what an amazing resource and partner ARWC has been for us. And like you'd speak to return on investment. Well, the other thing about ARWC is because they originate from the round table, they bring resources from the round table where there's a lot of well-heeled people that have an interest in Lake County above and beyond, you know, resources above and beyond what we have, but a common interest in protecting our resources. And so what I think Jonathan's done the last couple of years is really helped focus a lot of that attention up here. We're the headwaters, right? This is where you're gonna have the biggest impact for your dollars spent. And because we have so many water utility providers up here, you know, with deep pockets, it's been really successful. So I would say this is one of our most important partnerships as far as natural resources goes in the county.
Great.
Thanks, Bryce.
But yeah, but it's more of a watershed protection, it's holistic, right? Where that's where the forest focus comes in on.
Less infrastructure focused, more of, you know, what's kinda happening naturally
Yeah,
and how can we keep, protect some of those things in the event of catastrophes and other possible future events.
exactly, getting ahead of it.
Okay. Great, okay. That helps sum things up too. Thanks, Bryce.
Yeah, we have got a lot of work to do, so I'm trying not to take on too much new stuff, given everything I just described to you, that's all happening in Lake County. We have Sam up here as Watershed Coordinator, and we've got a forester that's gonna be housed at State Forest Service, which will be available to the county, the fire department, to work on these projects and to move these things forward. But for now, it's let's do the things we've promised, which are quite a few, as you've seen. And so we've got a few years of work here, but it's work that we've been after for a while now.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep at it here in 2025.
Cool. What did you call it, what term did you use with those soil deposits?
Fluvial tailings.
Fluvial tailings,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna have to remember that one, it sounds fun.
Yeah.
Fluvial.
Literally used to just be flood events that would just release all that out of California.
Yeah, it's crazy that even after it traveling so far in the water, that it still just kills stuff. That's insane.
Yeah. So we're combating a lot of legacy that happened long before any of us were around.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we can't work on fixing it.
Yeah.
And our downstream partners, you know, Chaffey County and below are interested in all of this too, because a fire and a flood event will affect them. You know, mining contamination affects water quality downstream, so
Yeah.
we have been successful in getting a lot of support. And one thing I'll mention too, Bryce was onto it, I'll be in Pueblo tomorrow, making another proposal to the Arkansas Basin Roundtable for some fire and flood support, starting hopefully late in 2025, because we just expended the last of it, guess what, on the Interlochen fire. And we're trying to just keep a fund going of pre and post fire work that's across the basin. Because we don't know where it's gonna hit, but we're one of the few groups that works across the county lines. And you guys benefited from that because we were able to match that with some water utility dollars and state dollars and do a little bit more work than otherwise might have happened with just the Forest Service. I mean, let's face it, they can't do everything, and they're probably even more limited in capacity these days, so that's what we're trying to do, is just be a little bit more ready for these things.
Alright, I don't have any more questions, I don't think, Jonathan. You good, Matt?
I'm all good. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Great, thanks for having me, everybody. I
Alright,
know I threw a lot at you, but feel free to reach out to me. Try not to be hard to reach, so appreciate it.
alright. Well, good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Of course.
Okay, next calendar review, agenda item 3. You're up next, Sandra.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you guys squeezing me.
Big empty
Yeah.
vehicle.
Right?
Thanks again, have a good one.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay. So I can't see with my glasses on, I can't see with them off. Alright, next week. Monday the 17th. Doesn't look like we have anything going on. Tuesday the 18th. Regular meeting from 11 to 2. And regular city council meeting from 6 to 8. The conservation district monthly meeting is also from 6 to 8. Wednesday the 19th, community coffee from 8:30 to 10. Ooh, a light week next week.
Did we cancel our Wednesday, work session next week?
Yes, yeah, the afternoon work session, next week? No, next week is a regular meeting week.
But our Wednesday?
Oh, for the legislative,
Okay,
actually that, I don't know why that's not on here. I need to add that, we need to add that on here.
okay,
Yes, thank you for catching that. I could have swore I saw that on there yesterday. Yes, we are doing one here, but since it's after the regular meeting, then we will put that on I believe the consent agenda on the 1st. For your
Okay.
discussion about that,
alright.
okay? Thursday, doesn't look like we have anything. And Friday the 21st, fire management board meeting from 9 to 11. And Twin Lakes Community Coffee from 9 to 10. I will get that 19th updated.
Okay. I can't think of anything else that, other than like just one-on-ones and
Yeah, I was gonna say
individual
your
commissioner meetings, I
personal-
can't think of anything else.
Yeah, your personal calendar,
And I'll probably try and meet with all of you next week to go over the fire IGA with the city,
Okay,
so you understand that one better.
yeah,
Cause that one's still has not been updated or finalized yet,
okay.
that IGA.
I am going to try to push for, after reaching out to, Pat and Dan out at Cooper, Dan Torcell, about trying to get a work session together just with them and some of the, like the rec, Duncan and Adam. And I think that'll help out with their, needs moving forward with the Forest Service to show some more community engagement that the Forest Service is wanting to see.
Okay,
So I don't know where we're gonna fit that in, I just need to put that on your guys' radar. you know, hopefully coming up here soon.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know and we can try and find a spot. Okay. That is it for me. And yeah, so we're running a little bit ahead of schedule. We're gonna do 15-minute break.
Sorry, I have a question for Commissioner Lee and Bullock. I know it's breaking our new rules, but since the Lady Panthers won state for Nordic, would you wanna do a proclamation celebrating them next week?
Absolutely. I say yes, 1000%. I'm sure Matt would agree.
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay. Sorry, everyone.
Oh no, you're fine. We've got time. We're gonna take a 15-minute break. Shape,
Heck, let's have a parade.
yeah, right. Shape won't be able to be here or join us, I think, virtually until 11 anyway, so,
Yeah.
we've got other stuff, or we wanna take a little bit longer than a 15-minute break, but they'll be able to join at 11, so.
Cool, alright, well, now that we're done with agenda item 3, yeah, let's take a break until 11 o'clock.
Well, and we can see, so many,
Boy, they're showing up pretty late, aren't they?
yeah. Let's see if,
PM?
Oh,
Yes.
that's awesome. Sweet. Screwed that one up good.
It's a
didn't I?
long break. Just kidding.
let's take a quick 10-minute break and let's see if we can get everyone here early.
Okay,
Does that work?
yeah,
Okay.
Great, thank you guys.
thank you. Alright. And we are breaking for 10.
Either way.
Alright, awesome. So, they're gonna do their best to get on, as quickly as they can. They're in another meeting right now, but they're gonna jump on. So what I'd like to do is just give you and Matt a little bit of some history on where we're at and how this came to be. So, the previous board, and Tim identified that there is an unmet need within our community, for, an essential service that we provide through the coroner services, that drove creating this, coroner facility. And so we're locating this at the same parcel that Fire Station 2 is on. Once we went through a competitive RFP process to choose Shape Architecture, and they're working with Downstream Construction. Were our selected finalists through that process. And once we determined who was going to be doing the scope of work for us, and we started really diving into the existing conditions that are present on that parcel that the county owns. And so it took a little bit of time for us to determine. We worked collaboratively with Public Works and the fire department.
Hey, I would just wanna make sure that Matt is
Yeah,
here,
making sure
that
Matt's
he
there.
knew we got started again. Matt, are you back on?
Present.
Okay, cool, thanks, I didn't want you to miss any of this.
Okay,
Thanks, Andy,
great.
appreciate it.
Yep, yeah, thank you.
And so we really took some time looking at the access and how we would situate the facility on the site. So Michael was really a critical partner and collaborator in looking at what would work best. We wanted to get to native soil. We already had a geotech report done when we did the fire station, so we had an idea about the soils in the area, but we wanted to stay out of an area that had already been excavated for the fire station. So it took us several iterations with surveying and looking until we determined where the best location of the site was going to be. We looked at Public Works is doing a lot of the site work for the project to keep costs down. They're gonna be constructing the road, the culvert, they'll do some of the rough excavation for foundation. And they'll also be doing the utility trenches for the sewer, and the electricity and the water. So there's already a septic system present on the property that was oversized for the additional phases of the site. So when the septic system was put in, it more than is adequate, not only for the fire station and the coroner facility, but even for future use. So we already presently have an adequate septic system. There's a well there that's been augmented by the city of Aurora, because there is an easement on the west side of, or excuse me, on the east side of the parcel for the city of Aurora's pipeline. So in exchange for that, they actually augmented the well that the county has on the property to serve additional use. So we had adequate water and sanitation present at the site, and then obviously electricity was already present too. So the good news is that we had some cost savings in siting this facility at this location because of the utilities that were already present and the capacity of them. So that was huge, because typically to even have the water capacity at a rural site can be challenging. But luckily we have that additional augmentation from the city of Aurora. So we've gone through that process. Then the next thing that SHAPE really took some time diving into, the original RFP was designed to have a relatively small footprint of about 1,200 square feet, 1,000 to 1,200 square feet for the facility, plus a garage. The garage is pivotal because secondary trauma is something we have to be thoughtful of, as we have search and rescue, firefighters at the same site, also from the general public. So you also obviously want an enclosed space to be able to transport.
Yeah.
Once then we kind of dove into, we did cite.
Will the garage also be able to house, I mean, they've got a pretty nice vehicle, right? The corner, that will be where that is permanently.
We'll be able to fit in and they can pull the cot out and.
Perfect, okay, so it's like dual purpose, like enclosure, privacy and storage for the
Right.
vehicle, okay.
Right, and that'll bring up a good point in, kind of coming up in the discussion. But SHAPE worked with the coroner, we all met out on site, Public Works, the coroner, the assistant, the deputy coroner, SHAPE, and the engineering, and the contractor downstream, to just kind of look at operations. We also consulted the fire department as well. And then SHAPE went and met with other coroner facilities. They went and toured them, got a better idea of operational space. One of the things that we didn't anticipate, and to your point, is that in thinking about budget, we had thought we just needed kind of an unconditioned garage space, someplace that they could, transport in an enclosed, respectful space. But what we didn't anticipate is that area, as you indicated, has to be very operational. A lot of the operations that they do in that garage space is critical to the overall operation of the facility. And so what we had anticipated is a much lesser price per square foot for this space, but because it has to be operational, it raises to a finished square footage amount. But SHAPE is going today to present to you our new plan. We met with Tim and did a couple different iterations. There was at first some thoughts about designing conference space. We identified that we already had that available at the fire station. We wanted to be very fiscally responsible and look at our budget, and so anywhere that we could trim anything off of those first iterations was one of our very first meetings. So initially there was a thought of a 2-story facility. We have gone down to a single facility, and but based on those operational needs, there are some room for discussion that we need to bring to the board today, because even with really pulling back and being very efficient with the space, there is a shortage between what we had budgeted and what our numbers are now. And so SHAPE's going to go through that, but I will tell you that initially we thought we were $120,000 over budget, and we have been very thoughtful and been able to pull it back to 50,000. So I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into it because they're not here yet. But what they're gonna show you is how we've kind of thought about trimming back and creating a facility that is, will stand the test of time. It will be a good facility, something that, will be an improvement. Sometimes it is, I would suggest it is expensive to be cheap. And so we've minimized, there's no conference space. We've gone to a single story, but the addition of needing that garage to be
More functional.
operational has led basically to the increase in cost. Also, the additional site work that we needed to really work with Public Works to make sure that we got to the best location on the site. So there was some additional survey work that was need to be done. We're gonna pull back on additional geotech. We believe that we have enough information on the soils there to be able to design the, design the foundation. And so we now have, I don't know when Bunny, we can wait for Bunny too. She'll be jumping on here in a minute, but Morgan is here with SHAPE and Justin and Beaver here from Downstream. And so just to, Matt's online and Commissioner Lee is present. And what I've done so far is just kind of tell them about, where we started out and how we've worked with different facilities throughout the state and the coroner to really better understand what the operational space needed to include and how it needed to function. I have shared that the garage really is an integral part to operations, and that's something that we hadn't anticipated. I've talked about, kind of the additional time and cost of really considering the site conditions and the best location for the facility, and that we've been working with Public Works, that we've looked to reduce cost by participating and collaborating with Public Works to do the access road, the culvert, and the utility trenches, and maybe some of the rough foundation excavation. And I have jumped ahead a little bit, and it looks like Bunny's here, so we can just get Bunny in. And just suggested that you would be presenting the current plan, but we started off at about 120,000 over what we had anticipated budget-wise. And with a very thoughtful approach, we've been able to pull that back to closer to $50,000 of the delta between what have we budgeted for and realistically, given all of the very thoughtful approach to designing a facility that will really serve the needs of the community, but also minimizing maybe any opportunities that we've found to be able to minimize cost. And so that's what I've shared thus far. Hopefully you heard that update, Bunny, and I am gonna turn it over to you. So Commissioner Bullock and Commissioner Lee are kind of up to date on kind of what brought us to where we're at today, and that we're here today to talk about where we still are looking for funding to bring this project to fruition. So I am happy to turn it over to Bunny or Morgan. And I don't know, Bunny, if you heard all of what I shared, but basically I just kind of talked about the ways that there were some unexpected costs around operational area with the garage, the additional time and cost in finding the best location on the site, and the participation with Public Works. I also talked about originally, the design had conference space in the second story, and that SHAPE has worked very thoughtful with the guidance provided to providing a very efficient use of space to stay within budget.
Great, that's a really good summary, Anne, thank you. Am I able to share screen? It's telling me that it's disabled right now.
Just 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
Should work now, Bunny.
Perfect. So I'm gonna just share a summary slide that's got a bit more detail about some of those changes that we've seen that Anne was describing. And I'm gonna make this full so everyone can see it pretty big. So in September of 2025, Shape and Downstream worked together to put together a proposal for Lake County for this facility. It was pretty early on in the project, and a lot of assumptions had to be made about the project, but we were pretty close with the area of the building that was needed at 1,000 square feet and a garage space that at the time we assumed was unconditioned, very low level of insulation, and really just a place to house the van that's used by the coroner's team. And so that construction cost, without sort of the full robust understanding, came in at $470,000, with the design fees at about $112,000, and a total budget in the final contract not to exceed $750,000, but with a note that it would be evaluated at the end of schematic design. And so that came out to a building that was roughly $400 a square foot and a garage that was roughly $200 a square foot, based on those total numbers. We worked through the schematic design phase, produced a pricing set of drawings, and downstreamed those to cost the project, and came back with a construction cost of $734,000. And there are a few reasons for that. The overall square footage of the project only increased by about 50 square feet, but the garage was much more complex and larger and required more sophisticated mechanical systems to accommodate the type of work that's happening in that space. Similarly, the plumbing complexity increased. And as Anne mentioned, there was also some increased site complexity to move the location of the building further away from the fire station and to give it its own parking and a separate drive from the entry to the site. And so that increased the total budget by 13%, up to $845,000. But at that point, we also did what's very typical and added in a 20% contingency to help any unpredicted developments in the project, and particularly market forces and any unpredictable changes in the cost of materials. And we don't know what the cost of things are going to be in 6 months, and so it's just advisable to add in that contingency. And so it's there as a safety factor at this point, which we think makes the budget a very healthy estimate of what the actual project will take at this point, now that we've really worked through the design and the assumptions about it. So we took that cost from downstream and we looked at ways to reduce the overall cost, and we brought it down to $667,500 through a series of cost savings opportunities. Some of those that involve public works, doing some of the site work, and also by trying to balance the mechanical complexity of the project. We also made some modifications with the windows and the garage door and other things that we thought did not impact the functionality of the space, but were appropriate cost savings. And we reviewed those with the team, and everyone's on board with those. We also had some additional enabling work fees for the geotech survey, because the location of the building moved much further away from where the existing fire station is. And then also for some site surveying data that showed the conditions of the site after the fire station was completed. And so that work had to be added in, and there was cost associated with that, but it's to help control cost in the construction phase. And then there was additional design work and complexity that took place, including the need for a drainage report as part of the site review process that'll happen at the end of the next phase, and that's work that our civil engineer will be doing. The increased complexity of the design for our mechanical and plumbing team, and then the redesign of the site and building when we relocated it away from the fire station for the design team. So that increased the enabling work and design fees from that 111.6 to 137.9. And it's reflected in a total budget increase of 7%, at 805.5 roughly, but with a building and garage at $327 a square foot, which we think is a really great value for building in this area. That's where we are today. I have some additional information pulled up to help answer questions, but happy to answer any questions that folks have now.
I have a couple, just, you mentioned the lifespan, and do we have a projection of how long of a lifespan we're gonna get out of this facility?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and Morgan may want to add to this, but we're building, with a really durable and well insulated airtight envelope and roof, or envelope assembly, walls and roof and foundation. And we really build institutional buildings to have a 100-year lifespan so that you aren't having to come back and do a lot of work. Something like the roof has to be replaced after about 30 years sometimes. Morgan, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just say comparatively, there was talk of a modular solution at the outset. And, we've worked with school districts and various entities, and there's really about a 20-year lifespan for those buildings. So it just seems like we're burdened in this county with so many of these old buildings that are going to be around us forever, and we're just going to maintain. So there is an update to the cost for this building to do a over insulated stick build building. It is passively heated designed and super simple form. We're also going to provide the next design phase an understanding so the county will see the savings it will acquire over the lifespan of the building in terms of the cost to run the building on an annual basis. So I think it's appropriate to say 100 years for this with some obvious upgrades to finishes and roof like Bunny mentioned, but that's the intent here.
The van Critter uses, it's a high top transit. And I'm guessing you guys have matched that up to the garage pretty well. I just know I have a really hard time finding places to park a high top Sprinter van, so it's it probably sounds like a dumb question, but it's we aren't gonna end up with a 10-foot garage and an 11-foot van, right?
No, yeah, there's been a lot of scrutiny around the garage because as we've gone through this design, we've really understood that it's like the beating heart of the building.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the work is taking place, and so there's been a lot of due diligence working directly with the Lake County Coroner. We've talked to a handful of other rural county coroners as well to understand some of their drawbacks of their current designs. Some of them are planning on buildings, some of them have designed their own buildings. So all that research is going into this one.
Okay. And Ann, I heard you mention something about native soil and extra parking. The location on the property, we moved it further away and that added to the cost. Can you elaborate again on why we moved it further away from the fire department too?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna let Morgan kind of take the lead. It also, the example, or the in saying that it also extended kind of the time frame and the timeline that we've been working under because initially we had thought about a different site, a different location, and then I'll let you go ahead and talk about.
Yeah, I think the preliminary idea was to locate it as close to the fire station as possible. So yeah, Bunny's highlighting the original location right there, and which made sense, I think, for a lot of reasons. You're super close to the all the utilities, electrical, the septic, and that made a lot of sense, the water as well, the wells back there. So I think from a planning standpoint, where the RFP came from, that kind of made sense initially. Once we started talking to the fire department, they were like, no way, mass casualty event, that whole parking lot is full. The fire in Twin Lakes, we had was that entire lot was full, and so if there's also casualties happening during a mass casualty event, that would be could be a logistics nightmare.
In a worst case scenario, disaster event, we'd have people running over each other at that facility essentially.
That was a big concern, and so essentially we were taking it from a cleared area where we had a better understanding of the soil based on the report that was done to the fire station, moving it up on the knoll, which now we're on native soil. So, we'd kind of talked to the county and expressed that doing a geotech study, while it is an additional cost, is a really good insurance policy on the life of the building, and it's a drop in the bucket. And sometimes with that geotech study, the structural engineers can make the design of the foundation simpler. So sometimes it pays for itself. Either way, it's a good idea. And working with Public Works, they really wanted to see it up there and kind of helped with the driveway and the turning location. And so it's been a pretty collaborative effort up to this point.
Okay, no, that makes sense to me now, thank you. And then, is there, none of us have a crystal ball on this one, but like, I'm assuming this is gonna be a steel building? Or is this gonna be? Wood framed.
Steel siding and roofing.
Oh, okay, so then like fluctuations in steel prices isn't gonna throw this thing all over the place as much as if it were a steel commercial type building?
Correct, it could
Okay.
influence the cost of the siding, as Buddy mentioned.
Yeah,
For resiliency and maintenance, we're wrapping it in just a simple corrugated metal that will
Okay.
require very low maintenance, but there's definitely potential for that siding item to go up.
yeah, the side, yeah, but it sounds like they've already planned for, that amount of fluctuations. With uncertainty in markets and stuff regarding steel imports and whatnot. I don't have, that covers my questions on it. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to ask these guys?
Yeah, I'd like to ask how we're gonna heat this place.
So yeah, it is, the fire station is all electric. There's no gas or propane tanks out here, so we are planning for an all electric building. That will be a heat pump system, which is 3 to 4 times as efficient as straight electric. We're still kind of working on the design itself, but downstream has brought up some ideas on how to simplify that to basically make it more like a non-ducted system. Point source, so yeah, super simple, cheap equipment that functions well when we do have that additional thermal envelope in place. So they work hand in hand.
Okay. And then, do we have the construction costs seem pretty reasonable to me. The design cost, do you have a cost breakdown of the design costs? And how that $137,000, oh, there we go.
To zoom in a little bit here.
Can everyone see that? Is this still sort of small? I can make this full screen too. There we go. So you can see the enabling work at the top. We didn't have anything initially in that budget for survey or geotech. But as Morgan mentioned, we think it's really important to add that in. So that added roughly $12,000 for that work, just to set up the project and to share that information with our team. There was an increase in about $14,000 for design services, which included the architectural redesign, the civil work for the drainage study, which is pretty in-depth. For MEP's increased complexity. And then there's $6,000 in that total budget for the pre-construction services that Downstream's providing, which includes both advising us and doing cost estimates at each phase.
Okay.
Anything else you wanna know, Matt?
No, I'd just like to say that, you know, the fees seem high for such a small building. It's just, you know, it seems high. From my world, it seems really high. So $72,000 to design that small building seems high to me. That's all. I have to put that on record.
Bunny, do you have anything to chime in on that, like why, you know, someone with experience in building stuff is gonna make that observation? Do you have any input there?
Yeah, so I mean, if we look at the percentage of the total cost, it's within market rates. But I think it's also important to note that these design services for each trade are all the way through construction administration, not just through construction documentation. And so that's our lingo. But what that means is we aren't stopping work at the permit set submission. We're working with downstream construction through the full life cycle of the project build, through punch listing to make sure that everything's done according to the design intent, and we're supporting the county through that process. Sometimes a third party comes in and does that work as a project manager, but we're in a great position, having worked on the project, having a great collaborative relationship with downstream to do that CA process and to review each of the things they plan to purchase for the project in advance.
I would say too, to follow up on that, we do a lot of $800,000 projects, and a lot of those $800,000 projects are residential, which I think, you know, is Matt's experience as far as I know him, which I don't. So I do think our fees would probably be more around $40,000 for an $800,000 house. But this is a really complicated building with a lot of different uses and sensitivities and different types of people coming in to use it at different times. So there's 30 grand in there that's really, and the site is also quite complicated with the drainage and the access, and the parking requirements, and the garage itself. So that extra bit is really to kind of coordinate everything, all the sub-consultants and dealing with the special requirements of the building, because ultimately we're on the hook for coordinating all that. So that's where that additional 30 grand comes from. And we did provide a 10% reduction on our hourly rates for Lake County.
So like the design services regarding all the technical aspects of this building really added to the cost of the design fees is kind of what it's.
Exactly, yeah, it's not a house.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, one thing Morgan mentioned that we've done as part of the first phase is we've gone on a site visit to another coroner's facility, and we've had meetings with a couple of other coroners who've had experience building these buildings, to get their review of the project to make sure what we're providing you meets all of the sort of best practices in these types of facilities.
And Tim, we hired Colleen Canada, correct, as, you know, so typically they're on other projects, we've had additional costs because what SHEEP is the oversight has on other projects, that's been a separate contract. Because that's not typically all inclusive, so I'm not sure if we even have a ballpark of what we've paid Colleen Canada as a because she did oversight on the fire station.
Yeah, that was part of a lesson learned for the county when the fire station started, trying to do it all in-house. So hiring DPM to come in and finish the project was essential, but I don't know what the total cost for that is. I know the the fees for the courthouse renovation will be higher, but I can find those numbers.
I think just an awareness that, this is an all-inclusive kind of approach, whereas on other projects, having that project management come in is typically an additional cost that we incur to make sure that the project stays on track. And, so I think it's obviously, like you said, lesson learned that that's an essential part of the project success.
Cool, thanks for helping me, educate me on this, cause yeah, I guess if we've done it wrong in the past, then let's not do that again and, break it up into a bunch of things. And yeah, I guess, I'm understanding that there's a lot of technical aspects of this facility that aren't involved in other projects. I don't have any more questions about this, do you, Matt?
Yeah, I'd like to see a budget and a cost breakdown. Do you need to get the plans together? Cause downstream will also get a management fee as well? Or,
Our construction cost is inclusive from our end, so that covers our management margin.
and do you guys have a budget breakdown or are you waiting on plans?
We have a budget breakdown that's representative of where we are in the planning right now. We'll definitely need the opportunity to reassess it when we get to construction documents. But I'm hoping we can simplify some of the design as we go and keep that budget where it is, or if anything, bring it down. But yeah, we do have a breakdown next year.
But there is a possibility that your numbers could go up with the new design and the new location.
No, that was done after the move.
Okay.
A lot of the added costs, the added construction costs were moved to excluded items from ours that the county road and bridge would take on.
So what we're planning on doing is we have this set to come to the board on April 1st meeting. And so in preparation for that, we can make sure that we get you the budget documents and anything else. And so on the 1st, we're looking for guidance on moving forward with the project with this new information. But we'll be happy to make sure that we provide those packet materials previous to that April 1st date of seeking guidance and decision by the board to move forward with the project based on this new information.
I think maybe, it'd be nice to just get together one-to-one and chat about, go over where we went, all the cost cutting things, just so, I know you guys have probably looked at it from every angle and cut every cost that you can, so I think just as help us understand how deep you guys went into that, maybe we could just even email just some documents, show us, or a list of bullet points of here's where we cut this out, cut that out, cut that. So I think that'll help me rest easier that we've trimmed all the fat we can't really get anything else out of this. Or maybe someone with, a better knowledge of the subject might be like, well, have we also looked at this or that, you know what I mean? So I don't know if we need if I don't think I'd need a whole work session on it, but just some communication back and forth, maybe let us know where you guys found all the spots to trim it down.
Absolutely, we can work with Shape and Downstream and prepare something like that and get it to you prior to April 1st.
Okay.
And so and then we can all get together one-on-one so we can send it to all of the board. And then if you wanna talk to staff, we can kind of digest it together.
Cool.
If that sounds good.
That'll help it, again, this isn't I'm not super well versed on this stuff, I'm just gonna be honest about that, but, the more we talk about it, the more I'll learn, and Matt might be able to chime in on some things too, so I think that's the only request I would really have.
Do you guys wanna look at the existing floor plan just for 2 minutes to familiarize yourselves, so
Yeah.
you guys have those future conversations?
Yeah.
You can, great,
Yeah, absolutely, if we can pull that up.
yeah, that'd be great. Honey, can you share the floor plan?
Yes. And just as a note, these are the drawings that Downstream used to create their cost estimate. So this is that site plan. And then this is the proposed floor plan. This is the garage space, which you can see is much more than a garage, but we've got that Ford Transit van dimensioned out with an extra high garage door, and it has a hydraulic cot that extends out the back. So there's room for that and then to walk around it and for the workspace. Shelving all along this side and then plumbed and ventilated workstations on the opposite wall, tied closely to where all the other building plumbing is. This is the morgue facility. And then this is a bathroom that includes a shower and laundry for the coroners when they complete their work. And this whole area has a separate mechanical ventilation system from this zone to keep the sort of clean air and dirty air separated. So they have differential pressurization. So that's some of that complexity in the design that we've been talking about. And it's also influencing how things are laying out. The other half of the building is pretty straightforward office space. There's an entry area, a powder room or a half bath for guests and for other folks who are here working when this bathroom's in use, and we just call it the clean bathroom. 2 office spaces, which was an adjustment from the original brief, but something that's needed for the coroners to be able to do private work. And it's about as small as an office can get, but there is room for a pull-out couch. So it's double functioning as a sleeping room when people have long shifts and don't feel safe returning after a late night of work. And then the conference room is sort of the space for folks to gather. Additional people can work on a laptop in this area. There's a kitchenette with a sink. And then this is all of the circulation space to this building. What our mechanical engineer told us, and we're hoping we can find some additional savings going into the next phase, is that our mechanical room may be able to get smaller, which means we might be able to trim a little bit off of this space too, to really try to tighten the overall volume of the building, which has sort of knockoff cost savings throughout a number of different categories, right? Like you save on your walls, you save on your foundations, you save on your roof. So that's an area where we're looking to tighten this even more. They have an existing shipping container for storage for large pallets of goods that they get and keep in bulk at the facility, but they don't need to be conditioned. That shipping container is likely still going to be on site, but we are going to get rid of this overhang. We were trying to give them a nice covered area in case it's snowing or raining occasionally just to access this, but it's not critical for the operation of their facilities. They can use an umbrella or they can just go when there's better weather and stage that. So we're reducing, part of the cost savings is reducing this roof overhang and this additional structure here. So the building footprint is really just this dark outline building.
Hey, Bunny, this is Chris Floyd, the county attorney. One of the issues that's come up in the past with the coroner's operations have been secure storage of personal effects. Has there, I don't know if anybody's discussed that in terms of the planning, and if so, where that might be located?
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, and we've looked at photographs of how other facilities handle it. Initially, they had it as a pretty big volume in the space. But we have locked storage along this wall in order to secure those things.
Great, and my vision's just not good enough to see that small print from where I am.
Yeah, no. It's built in, but if we gave it its own room, it made the building bigger than it needed to be. So we just asked the Lake County coroners if they'd be okay with it being sort of a cage along this space. As we iterated through the floor plan, and they were okay with that. Also, these areas all have to be under video surveillance as part of their security measures. So there'll be a recorded line of sight to that storage area too, where we understand there are things that you certainly wouldn't want anyone to be able to get a hold of.
Thank you.
the cold storage, is that built into the facility, or are we gonna be able to move the new refrigerator we just got into that space? Okay.
And it's designed a little bit bigger, so if a bigger cooler is needed, a bigger cooler can fit. But but that'll fit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just didn't want to make sure we weren't building a whole new version of what we just bought.
No,
And I think that has actually happened since we drew these plans. We got a note from Alex about the new cold storage facility needs. So that's something we'll make sure we review and get that right sized. When you look at this floor plan, there's some flexibility in how this room can be shaped and how this room can be shaped. And with these a little bit, so I'm optimistic that if they're new dimensions for the new cooler that was recently purchased, we can make that work.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm guessing there's all kinds of drainage in the floor of the garage for when the van is working all winter long and comes in there covered with ice and snow and falls out.
Yeah, we are showing 4 floor drains right now. We're gonna see if we can simplify that further. But yeah, there's drainage specifically for the van and for any oil that could leak from having a vehicle in that space. And then there's drainage in this workstation sink for other types of human products that might go down the drain.
Have you ever been up to the newer 10th Mountain Hut garages up there behind Feral Gas? Like they have
No.
this one long steel grate down the middle of each parking space instead of multiple drains. It's it seems like a really efficient way to catch any of the stuff that's like coming off of the vehicles, and maybe that could simplify it to one single drain instead of 4. Again, I don't know.
Yeah.
No pro in this stuff, but that seemed like, I've been in that garage multiple times and was like, oh man, that's a really sweet setup for vehicles that are being covered with ice and crud and stuff all winter.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. We worked on a greenhouse and we put a trench drain in there because they were hosing out the inside of the space so often and watering the plants. But we could definitely look at something that's more linear and connects and drains to sort of a single point.
Does that biohazard drain go into the septic system? Do both the garage drain and the bio drain connect to the septic system?
So the garage drain will have an interceptor for oil, and we're evaluating whether or not the bio drain needs to have any type of grease trap before it goes to the septic system. We're getting different reports from various coroners, particularly coroners in more rural facilities who have not used a grease trap system before. They're equating the waste that's going down that drain to like a residential kitchen sink. We want to be very confident in that decision. So we're holding it in the sort of mechanical and plumbing assumptions right now. But we're trying to see if it's something that could be removed because it would simplify the long-term maintenance of the project. When you have those interceptors or traps, they have to be cleaned. And so we would need to understand what the long-term maintenance of that looks like for the team using this space.
And do you have any elevation drawings of the?
So pretty simple. This is that southern face. We're really trying to focus as much of the glazing there for passive heating. It'll warm up that concrete slab and do a lot to control the overall operational energy costs for the building in the winter. One of the, as I mentioned, a couple of the cost saving measures that we've worked through with Ann and Melissa is reducing this overhang And then taking these windows, instead of having them being separate window elements, and just putting them in the garage door. To reduce costs there on glazing. But we're still trying to get some light into the garage so that it's a nice space to work. And then the offices have operable windows for fresh air and for light.
Yeah, the roof, the roof form, I guess the only thing to mention on that is it derived it from the fact of like having the, bigger spaces up front where we can get more south glass. And, we're very kind of conscious of maybe future solar panels, which this roof would accommodate because it's sloping up to the south, but the fire station probably has the best south-facing roof in the county, that's basically ready for solar, so if the county wanted to make that investment at some point, you could easily, include the power associated with running this building off of that system. And the roof pitch is a little bit higher, but that will allow any number of different types of roofing materials like asphalt shingles, which is probably one of the cheapest and has really good longevity, 30 to 50 years. Super simple roof form, no penetrations, really trying to keep it as simple as possible. We're definitely open to more ideas about value engineering, with your guys' input and background, absolutely. And we'll send you the list that we've come up with so far, and if there's other ideas, happily incorporate them.
Yeah, maybe just like, can you include these drawings in our communications moving forward?
Absolutely.
Cool, I don't have any more questions on this. How you feeling, Matt?
Yeah, the more information, the better. We appreciate anything you guys can share and, help us justify the budget to the folks that we have to answer to. And, keep moving forward. I'm not gonna try and take over management or anything. I'm gonna stay in my role here at the county, but, after what happened next door, I think everyone's gonna be watching this project to make sure it's a success. And given what we're gonna pay for it, it should be a smashing success. So we're counting on you guys to really come through for us. Make us look good, you know what I'm saying?
That's our goal.
Great.
Great, we'll work on getting all the information together for a packet for the board, and then we'll be prepared to have it on the April 1st agenda for
Okay,
direction.
alright,
Thank you.
alright, well, thank you guys for being flexible and showing up early for us. 'Cause
Yeah, no problem.
we,
Nice job being 15 minutes ahead of schedule.
I think it's a first, for sure, with this crew, we love to go take extra time. And, yeah, thanks for answering our questions and being, flexible with us, asking, more questions moving forward.
Of course.
So,
That's the
great.
key.
Alright, that's all for me, and I think Matt, you're good with where we're at so
All
far?
set, thank you.
Okay, alright,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks.
Thanks for your time.
Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Bunny.
thanks Bunny, thank you
Thank you.
guys, thanks Ann.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise,
I'm Beef.
Beef, Andy,
Andy, nice to meet you.
nice to meet you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, you guys have a good day. Alright, does that wrap up officially for us? Alright, so 11:24 a.m., we are gonna conclude today's work session, Lake County Board of County Commissioners. Thanks everyone, thanks Matt for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
Alright.
Thank you.